My name is Sue Ward. I'm talking today about an 18th century housekeeper in Newcastle. She may not in fact have been a housekeeper. She might have been someone looking after her own family in a comfortable but not rich home in Newcastle, or maybe nearby. We don't actually know who she was, but we do know she kept a notebook in the 1750s and 1760s full of remedies and recipes. Many of us, or at least our mothers did, keep similar notebooks with recipes copied out from newspapers and books, jotted down from friends, and other notes about the best suppliers, how much ingredients cost, and so on. Our housekeeper's notebook is in Northumberland Archives and on the internet, and I'll give you details about how to find it at the end of this talk. It's fully transcribed by a group of volunteers, and it's available to anyone. How do we know it comes from Newcastle? It's got a lot of references to Newcastle people, to places, and local newspapers. There are references to suppliers in the Groat Market, which was then a major marketplace within the city. There's Sir Walter Blackett's gardener, and Sir Walter Blackett was the MP for Newcastle at the time, and also owned by far the largest house here in Anderson Place, just about where Blackett Street is now. And there's the newspaper, the Newcastle Courant, from which several recipes are copied out. The cookery recipes in the book are not actually very different from modern ones, but the cooking itself was much harder work. There's nothing like baking powder. If you wanted yeast, it had to come from brewing ale. You were cooking over open fires or in an oven with no thermostat, certainly no nice dial where you could say Mark IV. The ingredients were dirty and unprepared, and there were no electric mixers. Just to give you an idea of what a difference that made, there's one recipe for a very big plum cake with 32 eggs. You started by beating 4 pounds of fresh butter to a soft cream with your hand. You whisked the whites, which was going to take half an hour. You took 4 pounds of currants, well washed, picked, dried, and plumbed, which means stoned. And you had to have ready a pound of almonds, which you had blanched and then flaked, shaved longwise, very thin. Prices for that recipe are also given, and they're very different from today. Sugar was 6p a pound, 2.5p, but 18 eggs were only 4.5p a pound, 2p. And with a cake like that, you wouldn't have baked it yourself. You would have taken it along to the bakers, and they would have charged you for it. So that was 9p to get it baked. The hard work, of course, would have been done by the housemaid or the kitchen maid, who would have got about £8 a year plus her keep. And the lady of the house would have supervised her, but probably not had the vast muscles that she would have had. This cake being so large, perhaps it was for a celebration. And here's a picture of how you celebrate in the kitchen. Jolly times being had by all. Another recipe is for pickled onions. Again, very similar to what we would have had. What we would have now. But then if you get onto the medical recipes, they are really rather different. Here's an example of one on the same page, in fact, as the pickled onion recipe. And it includes several things which you really would not want to include. We have a warning on the website saying, do not try this at home. This is a water for sore eyes. 4 ounces of bole almanac, which is a sort of red earth, including iron oxide and other minerals. Camphor, which is the white powder we use in mothballs and comes from a tree found in East Asia, and bitter almonds, which have cyanide in them. So some of them, the recipes are actually just very long. They probably wouldn't have done you much good with all the mixture, but you needed a lot of ingredients. This one for a green ointment has 2 large handfuls of each of 33 different herbs, 3 pounds of butter, 4 pounds of boar's grease, and then chop them all up and cook them for 2 hours in the fat. It was important to get the herbs right. Deadly nightshade on the left of the picture is just what it says, deadly. Common nightshade on the right of the picture is not deadly at all. In fact, it has some uses. So you need to make sure you get the right one. There were specialists who could collect them for you, skilled women workers. And there's several notes about who to go to. There's a lady near Stella, or perhaps Winlayton, who collects herbs for the apothecaries and surgeons, or the one I would have preferred to go to, Jane Pine of Sunderland by the Sea, who gathers herbs and tells fortunes at the same time. So you can multitask if you go to her. But why would the author of this book have been looking for such herbs and such recipes anyway? It was part of a housewife's job to deal with illnesses and injuries. Doctors cost money and really only dealt with the rich. The apothecaries, what we'd now call chemists, were cheaper, but not always to be trusted. They might add cheap ingredients to their medicines to bulk them out and save themselves money. So there was a lot of time spent on looking for medicines which would work and be affordable. There was actually no cure for most diseases. You got better, you lived with it, or you died. Really only in the 19th century, and in fact not totally until the 20th century, with the discovery of antibiotics, were most diseases curable. Before then, there was a real search for remedies all the time, and a real market for patent medicines which would do everything for you. And you'll see on the advertisement in the Newcastle Courant, a valuable medicine which will exceed everything that was ever offered to the public for the above disorders. And those disorders are almost everything. So it was always worth trying a new recipe to see if this one would work. And some of the recipes in the book include remedies for stuffing in the lungs, strangury, which is stomach pains, costiveness, which is constipation, the colic, or we still have colic, swellings in the face, and dropsy. And there are also several recipes for plague water. Actually, plague wasn't a real danger by then, but there were periodic scares, particularly in ports, of foreign seamen bringing in plague. And there were myths about it, one of which again is in the book, that this particular plague water in the recipe is so effective that some thieves would take it before going into the house of a sufferer, steal all their goods, and get away with it without infecting themselves with the plague. Anyway, so there was big market, lot of advertising. Sorry, it's gone on too far. Whoops. Yep, for elixirs and patent medicines. One of the popular ones was called Daffy's Elixir. It was actually sold for about 200 years on mail order. You sent your money to an address in London, and they put it on the mail coach and sent it, in fact, to the printers. Because printers, certainly in Newcastle and elsewhere, had a sideline in selling these medicines as well. The true elixir recipe in the book, there's another one which is much tamer, but the true elixir recipe had 2 gallons of brandy in it, which it might not cure you, but it would certainly make you happier. And there are numerous other recipes in the book. If you want to look further, you can find it in the manuscript, which is in Northumberland Archives at Woodhorn Museum. It's bound in with another manuscript called Edward Potter's Book of Physic and Chirurgery, which comes from the 17th century, and I've given you the reference there. Or it belongs to the antiquaries and it is all on the website, and I've given you the web address there. And so you can have a look both at the book and at the transcriptions that a whole group of volunteers have done from Explore and Newcastle Antiquaries. And you'd be very welcome to explore as much as you want more on what's on the Newcastle website, the Antiquaries website. Pictures, just to give you the credits, everything from the pictures that I put in are there, and thanks very much for listening.